Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. We're back again, part of our Corps Commander interview series. Last time, we would have interviewed John Crocker, honest John Crocker, as he would have corrected me, of 1st Corps of the British 2nd Army. And he was telling us about his Corps' adventure towards Cherbourg over the course of D-Day. Today, we have a very special treat. We're here with Dave Pumphouse, who commanded 30 Corps, or, he must have been, yes, Bucknall, was his in-game name, and he was in charge of the largest corps, other than the German 81st Corps, but we'll get to that later. Well, in the after-action report, I should say. He was in charge of the largest Allied Corps, 5 divisions, I think it was.
It was 5, yeah.
And so he had one heck of a time trying to conquer an entire sector of the map, or half of it at least, over the course of the day. And we're going to talk to him about it. You know, this game, we could say it changed him. It changed his life. You know, he's come out of this game a different man. You know, I'm told that he got married over the course of the game, and you know, basically he was walking down the streets in London, and one day, as he is used to doing, and this beautiful woman came up to him and was like, "I heard you're a Corps commander in Carter McNish's D-Day game." And he was like, "Yes, ma'am." And, well, just a few short weeks later, shotgun wedding. It's, wow. How far he has come in just the few weeks that he has been part of this game. So
You say that, you say that, but like my best man at the time, he was like, how's D-Day going? And I was just like, oh, yeah, we're just getting off the beach. And he was just like, oh, yeah, maybe you might reach such and such a place by your honeymoon, and then the game will be over by the time you get divorced, so it'll be all fine.
yes, so clearly D-Day has become a part of all of our lives.
Yeah.
All right. Well, welcome, Dave. Welcome to the stream.
Thank you very much for having me. Let's see how we kind of did, and fire away with any questions that you have about what I was doing and what I was thinking at certain points.
Yeah, so this is mostly going to be about, well, in fact, it's entirely going to be about what you knew, what you thought during the game, because I'm not going to show you anything of what actually happened. I just want to see what everybody was thinking as the game came to a close without knowing the stuff that happened in the AAR, right? So I want the raw thoughts, the raw details.
Raw thoughts.
Yes.
As the game came to a close. Okay.
Yes.
Raw thoughts as the game came to a close. But I'll try and do it by division. I'll tell you.
Sorry, Dave, you cut out there.
I'll start with first. Sorry.
Let's just start it with, I want to talk a little bit about the planning first, right? So for those of us, right, who are watching, who don't know exactly what you're supposed to be doing, how does your Corps fit into the overall plan, and how are you trying to accomplish your objectives, right?
Yeah, so our main objective was to meet up with elements of the 82nd at Le Creterie. So this was pretty much our main objective, along with, if we could, trying to take St. Lo. Now, on this particular planning map, High Command said that we could probably risk taking St. Lo on the second day, but I was kind of determined to try and take it on the first, as was my army commander. And basically our kind of motto was Le Creterie or bust. And what the ideal plan was that 3rd Infantry Division would land at Lance Beach, make an opening, and as soon as the beaches were clear, then 7th Armored was going to make a hasty landing at Lance A Beach, so it's kind of like in the region of Anville-sur-Mer, and try and punch through in order to get to St. Lo and Le Creterie. That was pretty much the main plan. Meanwhile, 3rd British Division would kind of pivot north and try and link up with the 101st at Carentan, and also, if they could, which was kind of an extra objective that I put on myself, to try and open up the beachhead and link up with First Corps up here by the end of the day. So they were our kind of 4 main missions, if you like. Link up with First Corps, get to St. Lo, get to Le Creterie, and try and link up at Carentan.
Okay. And so, of course, you have the largest corps, so 5 divisions, I think it is, right?
Yeah.
So, how did you go about deciding which divisions should accomplish which objectives? Because, of course, not all of these divisions have the same stuff with them.
To be honest with you, Carr, I was literally just trying to follow as I was told by army commands. Sergei is a tough taskmaster. He was like, "This is the plan. We're going to stick to it. Yeah, we might allow a few jigs here and there, but I want every division to basically follow the arrows, and your job is just to get them down the side roads, get them on the main routes of advance, and make sure that they end up at the end of the day where they're supposed to be." And I kind of gave him a promise, and I said, "Yeah, okay, leave it in my hands." And then what I did was I set up like a phased objective timetable for each division in order to try and reach certain objectives by certain times. I'm pleased to say that most of them did that. Some even surpassed all expectation. But yeah, we wanted to be bold. We wanted to, really, because we knew to a certain extent that this sector that we were in was going to be lightly defended. And we wanted to maybe give a bit of kind of shock and awe tactics and just keep pushing. Time is of the essence, because I was afraid, and I know a few others were afraid, that 21st Panzer, as soon as they realized that the biggest division or the biggest corps was landing over to the west, they would be diverted to probably the St. Lo sector in order to stop us. So we kind of thought that that was going to happen from the off. But yeah, I mean, it was really just kind of speed, efficiency. If you're stuck at any point, look at the planning document that has been uh, drawn up by high command, and follow it as best as you could.
Okay. And so, of course, there was a commander in Operation Desert Storm. I've been telling everybody, right? He said he was asked whether his operation was going exactly as he intended, right, what he was planning on doing, and he gave his explanation of what his plan was. But then he said, "The enemy gets a vote," you know.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, what were the perhaps contingencies, or what were your thoughts as to perhaps what the enemy was going to do? What was their vote going to be?
Okay, so if I could possibly draw on the map.
Yeah, I'll promote you. Yeah.
uh, yeah. So we knew that there was bunkers all along the beach line, but I was really worried about this being a secondary line of defense. This CN River here, which it turned out that it was. I was perhaps worried about, I think halfway through the day, when Coutances fell. I think it was Coutances. Yeah, we were going to have a defensive line along here, and even a defensive line along uh, the rivers here at Maringi. So I was skeptical that we'd be able to punch through, depending on the resistances and the type of bunkers and what have you that we were expecting. But as the day progressed, it seemed like some of the defenses in some of the sectors were a little bit like a sieve. Yeah, especially with 7th Armored. Uh, But yeah, there wasn't anything out of the ordinary that the Germans did in their defensive plan, I don't think. I thought maybe Perrier might have been a little bit easier to take, but I mean that was a battle unto itself. uh, but yeah, I mean that's kind of the main defensive positions that I thought they would take, and I was uh, pleasantly surprised when I was kind of almost predicting their movements, and then within a turn or two that would happen. Yeah, that's another story. But yeah,
Yeah, the key to a good commander, right? You know, Sun Tzu says you got to know your enemy, but you also got to know yourself, right? You know,
that's right. Yeah,
um,
and the capabilities and one thing that I did do as well was try and keep track of how many spaces you're allowing us to move, and that kind of dictated the movement of where I would expect people to be. And I don't think I got that wrong too much. I don't think.
yeah, and you
But
seemed
yeah,
to be inside the enemy's head a little bit. You know, there was you knew what he was going to do before he did it. Almost, you had it. You were inside the OODA loop. You know, kind of like General Lee. He heard about Meade getting put in charge of the Army of the Potomac, and he said, "Ah, a Pennsylvania man. I know he will be
yeah,
cautious." Right? You
yeah.
know, and it seemed like you were pretty much inside Rommel's head for the majority of the game. Um,
A little bit. I mean, there was a few surprises here and there, and you know, in the shoes of what you would do in that situation. And as soon as we got the words from the pink Spitfires in the air, spotting 21st Panzer on the move, and it was heading westwards, I was thinking, well, there's only two places they can go: St. Lo, or trying to reach the bridges with 80 seconds, to try and cross there and upset them. Uh, but yeah, and funnily enough, they did land on the doorstep of Seventh Armored.
right, and there was that huge tank battle later in the day. But I want to let's
Hmm.
rewind just a bit
Sure.
to the early morning.
Hmm.
Um, so, when your troops hit the beach,
Yeah.
was what was the what was the resistance more than you were expecting? Were there any hurdles, hiccups? Like, what was the beach landing like for you guys?
Beach landing was, shall we say, nail biting, because we didn't immediately hear progress coming back straight away. Um, there was a few sectors where we were like, I wonder what's happening there, and there was a little bit of drama. The biggest success I mean, because at the planning stage, I was worried about this monster down here, Granville. Yeah, it had artillery batteries and naval bunkers and everything up there on that high position overlooking. And I was thinking, okay, well, the Highlanders are just going to get slaughtered from all that flanking fire coming off. But within an hour, Granville seemed to capitulate and fall. And I was getting reports that, prisoners were captured, and it was a textbook operation, and it was all going well. Okay, we suffered a few casualties, but that was to be expected. And so that was a great success, because I was very worried about Granville. Uh, Third British Division, I was a little bit worried because we didn't hear much back from them at all in about the first 2 hours, and then I was left with a decision to make, because I had Seventh Armored basically telling me, well, according to the plan that you wrote, we're supposed to be on the beach next turn. What are we doing? Are we going? 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 And I was like, okay, well, let's just throw caution into the wind and land the tanks, because unfortunately, I didn't know what was going on at Lance Beach at all, really. And it was like, okay, well, we made a plan, so we're going to stick to it. And then when we landed on the beach, we were told that it was unimpeded, and there was uh, no carnage that, we suffered, and the tanks rolled off, and ended up in Coutances. It was to be expected. We landed pretty much on time, and then like those kind of phase one objectives, those first few towns like Anville-sur-Mer and Martin-sur-Mer, yeah, Montmartin-sur-Mer and Braille and stuff, pretty much fell within the first couple of hours of us landing on the beach, which was a great success, and it was really nice to see that progress of the core. Um, yeah, where you timed it just right and say, okay, well, they get to such and such a place by that time if they were doing well, and they did. They didn't let me down at all.
Interesting. So, with the forces off the beach, you were mentioning these defensive lines that you were expecting to
Mm.
encounter. Were there any hiccups in the? What were kind of the hiccups over the course of the day in your timetable? Because of course, right, everybody talks about the Germans, the Battle of the Bulge. Oh my gosh, their
Mm.
timetable was too strict, right? Was did the timetable hamper your operations, or did it actually help?
The timetable, I think, helped keep everybody to plan, and because you kind of factored in that there's going to be some resistance, right? You know that just because you can walk 3 miles in an hour doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to do that, because there's going to be roadblocks in the way. So we kind of factored in those kind of phased objectives that there's going to be resistance. Um, I will say that the defense of the Seine River, um, I kind of said to the commander of 50th Division at the time, I want you to capture that general or colonel on the German side, whoever's defending this river, because I think it came back to me that there was only a brigade of Germans defending this long stretch of river, and they pretty much held up an entire division for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. I was like, I want to know how he done it. Capture him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, I mean, every like I keep saying, everything kind of went pretty much on plan and on time, which was really really quite pleasing to know that at a higher level, when you're kind of planning an operation like this, that with everything factored in, you're like, okay, well, nothing is going wrong here. Yeah, this is all going to plan. And I know when high command was kind of pushing for extras, I was just like, hang on, let them just let them play, let them. Yeah, everything's to plan. Yeah, nothing's going wrong. Um, yeah.
And then, of course, as the day goes on,
Mm,
your lines are you're covering a lot of ground.
we did. Yeah.
Not just in terms of how far you've traveled, but in terms of how many kilometers, miles of front line that your men now have to guard. Is there
Yeah.
a worry in your mind that your corps might be, especially say in the south,
Yeah.
overstretched?
Yeah, there was that, and I was, especially with 51st Division. I mean, because they were really given the flank guard mission, because you want to treat the games as you would in real life. You wouldn't leave a flank open, even if there wasn't any enemies down here in the south. You wouldn't want to. Yeah, you wouldn't want to leave it unanchored. You wouldn't want to leave it open, and yeah, as we kind of got to those later phases in the game, in the operation, I was trying to urge people to, tighten it up a bit. Make sure you speak to the brigade next to you, even though he's not in the same division, because you never know, something might sneak through. Yeah, we might have uh, German units, in our haste for speed. Yeah, we've gone past a town or a village where they might be stationed, or they might have a strong point, somewhere along the roads that we might have to bypass, and then the infantry might have to mop up later. But yeah, kind of blitzkrieg tactics in a way where the panzers roll through, and then the infantry mop up afterwards. But yeah, there was a worry that the bigger the bulge got, the more men you'd have to kind of place to basically hold the line to make sure that no counterattacks came through. I guess that's why I kept third Canadian in reserve, not only because they were going to assist and be fresh in that kind of final push to St. Lo, but if we did have to plug the gap anywhere, they had the men to do it.
Right. And so, also kind of along those same lines,
Mm.
I'm wondering, right? It's not like you've got Mulberry Harbors set up. It's not like you've got
I
a
wish we
port
did.
connection. Yeah. Not, that takes days, right, to set up the Mulberries.
Mm.
And so your troops, your forward elements are, like 10, 20, 30 kilometers away from the beach.
Yeah,
Are you at all worried about the state of your logistics? Like, sure, you might have pushed this far forward, but it's going to now be
of course.
that much harder to supply your men for any push after that.
Yeah, and that was something that I did have in mind, and I guess I wanted to, I tried to sneak it in there, but then I thought, okay, you're just now being a little bit pernickety. But when I saw the rail network, I kind of wanted to add an extra objective to basically say how, make sure we keep the rail network in in good condition, because if you can maybe land some supplies down here at Granville, although it's a very small kind of port, you've got like this rail junction that can take you all the way westwards, and it goes all the way up north and stuff. So if I was playing it out for real, and if I was a corps commander, I'd be like, let's make sure we keep those rail infrastructure in place, and see if we can try and uh, commandeer some rail carriages to try and get supplies up and what have you. But I mean, obviously, the longer the line extends, the longer the logistics and your own supply lines get stretched. That was something that I was worried about. However, command was like, you got to do it. You got to take it. Think about that kind of stuff. D-Day +2. And I'm sure after the fighting that occurred during the day, 7th Armored and 3rd British Division would need rest. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of 3rd Division is completely spent, as is 7th Armored, I'm sure. But that's something to think about for the next day.
Yeah, and speaking of which, right? So
Hmm.
D+1,
Yeah,
right? So your troops presumably are near the edge of where they can be supplied well.
yeah,
And so, and the Germans are presumably have spent the night shifting forces,
hmm.
preparing perhaps counterattacks or new defensive positions. What is the plan going forward? Are you going to be more cautious, or are you going to continue the aggressive push?
Um, I, I would like to. I mean, I'm probably more of a cautious commander anyway, and I'm very much a naysmith when it comes to some of the plans that were put in front of me. Although I promised people that I'd execute them as well as I could. Uh, I mean, from high command's point of view, I mean, this green line was supposed to be where we were supposed to get to on day 2, which is ever so less of a push of what we were trying to do on day 1. I probably think it would be doable. Especially when you could probably put half of 50th Division across the Vere River. And when 3rd Canadian got up to the front, uh, they should be pretty fresh, and they could, they would have 85-90% of their ammunition left and what have you. A few fuel reserves. I wouldn't think that 3rd Canadian would have too much of a problem capturing St. Lo on that second day if it wasn't taken on the first. Um, and then I get, I mean, to take your point, you would have to think to yourself, okay, guys, do we have the forces to push even further? And I guess you would also have to ask what was landing on D-Day +1 as well, maybe an extra division or two to plop in the line somewhere. But yeah, it was quite obvious that even by 3 o'clock, 50th Division especially was probably getting a little bit overextended for having to cover 25 miles of front. Um, but I'd be cautiously optimistic in still advancing on day two.
Okay. Interesting. Interesting. And then what so I guess what would your biggest fear be uh if the game extended beyond just D-Day, right? What would the big fear for your core's objectives be?
My biggest fear, politically, having Seventh Armored destroyed, and not being a fighting force. Them being the people's own for their efforts at El Alamein and Sicily and everywhere else. Um, but yeah, my biggest worry would probably be now I know that historically that there was a core down in I want to get the name Avranches, the city down here. There was supposed to be a German corps. So if they were ready to do a counterattack, I would sincerely hope that 51st Division would be digging in across the line along here well enough to repel it. Um, and uh, any really kind of pockets of Germans that might be lurking around, because I mean, you know, like I said before, the element of speed, you're going to risk missing pockets of resistance, and they're going to be running around in your back end, and that was something that I was a little worried about, but I'm hoping that the relative cohesion between the brigades and how they advanced, I don't think they left too much behind with regards to enemy strong points and what have you.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that big core coming up from Avranches is probably the big worry, eh?
I would think so. Um, Obviously, the Germans digging in along the Veer. I mean, it would be a tough defensive uh, place to crack, especially if we didn't cross it on day one. Uh, but yeah, those would be my fears.
Okay. Interesting. And then I just want to get your thoughts. I've kind of been asking everyone, right? It's not often in a Kriegsspiel where you have so many different levels of command
Mm,
run by players,
yeah.
right? So, as a corps commander, someone right about in the middle of all that, in the middle between Ike and then your brigade commanders, what was it like having player subordinates two levels, or players both two levels of command above you and two levels of command below you?
It was fun. I mean, I didn't have all that much interaction with Eisenhower. Obviously, I was speaking to Sergei a lot, the army commander, and reassuring him. And I've got to say, the brigade commanders that I met along the way, um, were they really did well. Um, I did spend a fair proportion of the game with Ninth Brigade, and it was really quite interesting because I mean, you kind of want to give advice and what have you, but you have to kind of remember that you're a core commander and you can't get into the nitty gritty. And I know outside Perrier, I was basically just kind of sending messages to my the my mate who was playing in Ninth Brigade. I was just like, oh, have you thought about that? And he was just like, oh yeah, but I'm going to play it like that. And I was like, okay, yeah, they're your men to command. No worries. If you like, I'm not going to micromanage your dudes. But yeah, it was good being a conductor, if you like, making sure that the whole orchestra moved forward and played to the right tune.
Indeed, indeed.
Yeah,
Well, that's probably about it. So thank you very much for giving us this insight into what it was like to command, well, the largest Allied corps in our D-Day game.
yeah. I tell you what, though, I'll if I'm allowed, I will
Yes.
load in my map that I was using. The arrows are ever so slightly different.
Yes, go
Uh,
please. I would love to
yeah,
see it. You should have
but
the permissions to do that.
should have the permissions. It's not loading. Oh, there we go. So yeah, it's the same module. And the white line is pretty much where I think the brigades got up to. And the green lines are where the Canadians were asked to move to. Funnily enough, the armor for the Canadians ended up down near Coutances, which I didn't understand. The brown line is just supposed to represent 50th tanks that were asked to come up here and help 7th Armored. And then, yeah, everything kind of speaks to itself. I mean, you've got the blue lines that everyone was supposed to reach by 10 a.m. The orange lines, everyone was supposed to reach by 2 p.m. And I was pleased that they did that. And then the red lines, everyone was supposed to reach to by the end of the day. And the big kind of push with the bold arrows is 7th Armored's route of advance. And I was pleased when they reached their 2 p.m. objective by 10 p.m. So that was kind of cool. But yeah, and obviously the black lines is, okay, we've got 21st Panzer there, and as I got reports of from about 2:30, 3, that some of the probing attacks that 21st Panzer was doing, they were falling back, and I figured that they'd probably try and get behind the Via River.
Very interesting. Very
Yeah,
interesting.
but that's how I kind of mapped it. Every half hour, the white line would be updated, and I'd draw a new bit, and yeah,
Wow. Jeez. But that's the Corps Commander's job, right? Trying to piece
yeah.
together the situation as best he can.
Mm.
Wow.
Yeah,
Well,
so I mean, whether that looks like what's on the board or not, I don't know. But I mean, that's what I figured. And of course, I used like the drafts pieces of where I thought Germans were hanging out from the reports I got back about the resistance and what have you.
yes, yes.
Yeah, because obviously I didn't have their pieces, so I was just like, okay, yeah, a drafts piece would be fine.
Yeah, there you go. Huh. Well, that is really, really neat, I must say. Um, so, there's the overall picture for 30 Core. I hope that the stream can see it pretty well. Very interesting. And it seems like you had a decent picture of what was going on elsewhere, too, based on the
Well, I mean,
reports.
the yes, I'm like Sergey obviously told me what the Americans are up to, and I really just had to, okay, so well, this is where they're going to try and push. And then when I found out that they were pushing to Volongis through because obviously me and Crocker shared a radio link as well. So when he was telling updates of his guys, I was like, okay, I wonder how they're getting on. And I was a little bit perplexed as to what was happening on his right flank, because it didn't seem that there was going to be much protecting it. But and it was kind of weird as well when I found out that the 82nd had crossed the Via River into Izini.
Hmm.
Because I understood that they were supposed to be following the Via River down south and blowing up the bridges as they went, and then they didn't have to worry about that flank, and all they had to do was meet me at La Creterie. But I think somewhere along the line, and I did have a conversation with Hugs before the game started, which was set up by the umpires to beg him not to cross the river. And I think there was a change in command, and the the plan never got changed for the Americans, and they did cross the river. So I'm now wondering whether people were actually asked to meet us at the Creterie at all.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll have to find out, huh?
I know, right? So, but yeah, so I just kind of marked those things, yeah, where they were supposed to blow up the bridges and meet us. But yeah, God knows what's happening on that side.
Yeah.
But
Oh man.
yeah,
Well, it's been a pleasure, sir. It's been a real pleasure.
always, yeah.
All right. Well,
Can't wait to watch it and find out what other corps commanders were thinking, especially the Germans.
yes.
Especially, I mean, all credit to Third Fallschirmjäger for holding off for as long as they could. I mean, this river defense along the CN. I want to know how many people were there, because it seemed like they just held up an entire division with not much, which was, yeah. I clapped him, whoever did it, when it
Yeah.
happened.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Respect for the enemy, just like the true British German vibe there, right? You know, the gentleman's war. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you so much. For those of you watching this on YouTube, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And I hope to see you on the next one, where we'll likely be talking with one of the American Corps commanders this time. Whether that is 5th Corps or 7th Corps, we'll figure out. And yeah, we'll see what happened with those bridges that the British thought that were going to be blown up. Yeah, so stay tuned. We have a lot of exciting interviews and other D-Day content coming out for you guys. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.